let's start at the beginning. And what was your family life, your home life like, and how did you get into music?
Oh boy, I probably got into music by accident because when nobody in my family, nobody played any instrument, you know. And evidently I was just fascinated with music, you know. And so when we were in the South, we had a piano in the living room, and I used to mess around with that, you know. And we moved. We moved into Illinois. My aunt was here, and she came, sent for me and my mother to come up, and to Evanston, Illinois. So I didn't have a piano here, so I wanted to play some music. So only thing I could figure out, you know, and then I heard Charlie Parker, you know, and all the guys, you know, and Dusty Young and all of them. Illinois, G.K. Dusty Gordon and all of them. So I decided to play saxophone.
And about what age were you when you decided to do that?
I don't know. When I decided, when I got serious about playing saxophone, I was about 12, 13, something like that. I was pretty old, and everybody told me I was too old, because most of the kids started playing music, you know, when they were very young.
Was there any particular performance, any particular record that just absolutely turned you on, that you had to become a musician after hearing that?
Yeah, the one I heard was Jay McShann. A friend of mine was in the Navy, and he got out the Navy, you know, right after the war. And he told me about Charlie Parker, and I think I told him, I said, well, he said, well, you know, Charlie Parker plays with Jay McShann. You know, used to play with Jay McShann. So I remembered a couple of records that my family used to play at home called Hooters Blues. You know, it was, you know, I guess they were breakable records, you know what I mean? You could, you know, what were they made out of? I've forgotten now what they were made out of.
Shellac, I think.
Yeah.
You're right, yeah.
And you could break them very easy.
Yeah.
So I went home and I found one of Jay McShann with Charlie Parker on it, and that was my first time hearing him, you know. And then later on I got a chance to hear, you know, Belly's Bounce and all the early records that he put out.
Okay. What does Charlie Parker mean to you as an influence?
Well, as an artist, you know, you know, I mean, he played for the people, but he never did play down to the people, you know. But he said that he was trying to play it clean and pretty and something that people would understand, you know. And I remember that all these years, you know. Something that's clean and so you can, you know, and it's basically simple, you know. You know, and he was a master with the blues, you know.
Right.
So.
And how important was the blues? And I mean, you're seen, of course, as one of the main figures of what is commonly termed, quote unquote, free jazz or avant-garde jazz. But
well, that's what I was introduced to music, you know, to the blues thing, you know, not the traditional blues, you know, like you hear, you know, like say for instance, like Muddy Waters. This was at that particular time. This was in the 40s, you know.
Right.
And everybody was playing, you know, like with Jay McShann, the swing blues and things like that, you know. And then Charlie Parker had his own way of playing it, you know, and it was very fascinating, you know, to hear how he was doing it, you know.
What are some of the qualities that you think? What were some of the qualities that really stood out for you in Parker's playing and his interpretation of the blues?
Well, he had a way of, he had his own, he learned from a lot of different people, but he created his own way of doing things too, you know. His approach was a little bit different, but it was based on the tradition. Yeah.
Right.
Because he checked everybody out. Johnny Hodges, Lester Young, Don Byers, Chu Berry, everybody. Even Jimmy Dorsey, he checked everybody out. So he just loved music.
How did you get your first saxophone? How did that all come about?
Oh, I got my first saxophone from a gentleman. He sold it. I can't remember his name now. But he was living down the street from me, and he sold me my first saxophone. But I had been playing the saxophone that my aunt bought from my first cousin, you know, because his father and my father was brothers, you know. And we were all living together, and she bought him a saxophone, and he didn't play it. He just laid it around the house. But that's how I first started playing saxophone.
Is that right? Okay.
And what happened is she took the saxophone and sold it from under me, you know, because I didn't have the money to buy it, you know. She had paid, you know, I think at that particular time, and then she paid $125 for a brand new saxophone.
Wow.
You know.
It's a lot of money then.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right. So I bought a saxophone from a guy down the street. Had been playing saxophone. He quit playing, and I bought it for $45. So my first saxophone cost me $45, and I didn't have all the money. So I was $5 short. So my aunt was holding the money for me, and so she gave me $40, and I paid it. And after a couple of weeks later, I paid him the other $5. And he had it in a cloth bag. So I didn't even know how to carry it, you know what I mean? I had it on my shoulders, carrying it like a gun. So so it was just one of them cloth bags. So the guys was teasing me. They said, "Oh man, you ain't gonna never learn how to play no saxophone." So I just kept walking.
Right. Great.
And you know, and then I just took it home, and I spent a lot of time just practicing by myself, you know. So actually, I didn't have a teacher till later, and so later on, I got a teacher, a guy named Mr. Coleman, and he started me out playing. He started me out basically with theory, you know, because he played, you know, he played a lot of different instruments, you know. I don't even know if he played saxophone or not, but he started me out just in theory, you know.
I see.
And that's how I got interested in theory. And then from then on, I just, you know, I started messing around with theory, and I went to a little school here in Chicago called Roy Knapp's, and I had a teacher that looked like he understood what Charlie Parker was doing, because he told me a lot of things that I use to this day, you know.
Really?
Yeah, you know, and, you know, after I thought about what he told me, you know, and I thought about it, you know, and he was talking about the bebop cats then, you know, and very few teachers was doing that, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then I got very interested in theory, you know. So I used to write a lot, you know. I wrote a lot of exercises, wrote a lot of scales and chords. I wrote all the scales and chords out myself. Made a diagram of, you know, of the keys, you know, and I spent a lot of time just writing stuff. And then after that, I decided, I said, well, look, I said, I got to learn how to play them, you know. So then I started working on, you know, the sounds of the chords and things like that. You know.
And was this Mr. Coleman that was still teaching you this thing, or did you have
No, I left
subsequent
him.
teachers?
I left him, and I went down to the American Conservatory, I think, in Chicago that particular time, and I had the same teacher that taught Lee Konitz. And I didn't stay with him very long, because because I was hearing something else. So I said, well, and then on top of that, I was interested, you know, when I was with Mr. Coleman, I was interested in Lester Young and them, you know what I mean? This is what I was hearing, you know.
Right.
And then on top of that, I had been listening to Charlie Parker, you know what I mean? So I said, well, the only way that I could probably get myself playing is to learn, you know, just try to learn, get familiar with the instrument, just try to learn how to get around on the instrument, because I had to get some kind of sound that would relate to what they were playing.
Right.
So that's what I started working on sound.
I see. So you're as much self-taught as you were by teachers, it seems.
Oh yeah, I'm
in order
mostly
to
self-taught.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still teaching myself and listening. And I do a lot of listening now, and I hear things now that I didn't hear before. And I thought I heard it, but I didn't. So,
Wow, great.
So it's what we call revisiting. You just keep listening and you hear things, you know.
What were, when you first started becoming a musician that would play in public, what was that like? What was happening there?
Well, I didn't start. I was out playing in public before the AECM. We had a little band. I had a quartet, and me and Billy Brenfield, a guy named Fletcher, and Bernard Thomas, we had a quartet, and we were playing. And I had this was in the '60s. This is about before, because Bill went to the service in '60. He got out, I think, in '61. And when he came back out of the service, I had put some tunes together, and so that's when we started that band, that Fred Anderson Quartet.
Okay.
This was before the AECM, and then after that, in '64, I moved. I mean, in '59, I think it was in '59. I think I moved from Evanston to Chicago, and I stayed in Chicago, and then that's when I met Richard Abrams. And then that's when we all of the guys, I met them when I was living in Chicago.
Okay.
And then I moved back to, I moved back to Evanston in '59. And then from then on, you know what I mean, I was traveling back and forth, you know.
Okay. Your first quartet with Billy and the other musicians, what kind of repertoire did you play?
Well, we was playing, you know, the standard tunes like Billy's Bounce and all those tunes, you know, too. But then when the AECM came about, then that's when I started writing. And then Arnett Coleman came on the scene around in that period, you know.
Right.
So, and then I started listening to him, you know, because I knew he was, he sounded a lot like Bird, you know, but he had his own style, you know, at that particular time.
Yeah.
So we was playing some of his music, we was playing some of my music, we was playing, you know. And then later on, you know, then everybody started listening to Coltrane. All the youngsters started listening to Coltrane. But by that time, I was listening to, I had been listening to Charlie Parker, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys didn't realize that I was old as I was, because I was always associated myself with the young musicians, you know. So, but they didn't even know that I had heard Charlie Parker, you know, when I started, when the AECM come out, you know, Charlie Parker died in '55, you know what I mean? But I used to talk about him, but they didn't realize that I had seen Charlie Parker, you know, in fact, the last time he was in Chicago.
Really?
A place called the Beehive.
Wow.
And
Did you ever meet Charlie Parker? Did you ever?
no, I never did. You know, he was almost bigger than life, man. You know, and so I mean, you know, so I never did. I don't know. I guess I was too shy, you know. But I resolved all of the things that he was doing. You know.
Okay. You know, in the 1950s, Sun Ra was also in Chicago. I was just wondering, how was he as an influence? Was he like somebody that was really important on the scene, or how was he regarded at that time?
Sun Ra was important because that's when I met John Gilmore. You know, he was playing with Sun Ra at that particular time. You know, in the '50s. But I didn't associate myself with John Gilmore till the '60s. And that was a little before they left here. You know, a little before they left. And I got a chance to see John. And I met him, you know, and when he left and went with Sun Ra, he called me up. I was living in Evanston then. I had moved to Evanston. He called me up and gave me a gig.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he told me, he said, man, I'm leaving, you know, would you take this gig for me? I said, okay, cool. And, of
great.
But I didn't really know Sun Ra as well as some of the guys did, you know. Like Robert Berry, he knew Sun Ra. I think he played with it, you know. And a few other people. I think Muhal, he knew about Sun Ra and all of them because they was in Chicago. So most of the time I was in Evanston just traveling back and forth.
Right, okay.
But I did get a chance to meet Sun Ra at the Jazz Showcase. This is just before he died, you know, maybe a few years before he died. And he was very interesting.
Yeah, indeed. But do you recall any of his comments to you at that time? Or?
I don't know, man. We was just sitting in the lobby when Joe was at the Blackstone, you know,
Right.
and we was sitting. And I hear more of the things that about Sun Ra now. Guys come and tell me some of the things, and you know, I can't exactly remember all of them. But anyway, he was always talking about space. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, his favorite subject, or at least one of them. Yeah. So the founding days of the AACM, you said you were meeting up with Muhal Richard Abrams and some other people. So how did that start to gel?
Well, I probably told this story quite a bit about how we started. I met Muhal over at a place called Fifth Jackson, and we were talking about it. You know, he the one mentioned, he said, we need an organization for the musicians, you know. And but it's called the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians. So that was before. I was about 63 or something like that, around in there before. And then it was later on they got a charter and started it up. And I was one of the first members.
Right.
Me and Steve McCall, Phil Coran, Jody Christian, and I think Roscoe came probably a little bit later, you know, and then Joseph, and it keeps on going. Now we got a lot of the young musicians in there now, and the other generations have joined the AACM.
And the Joseph Jarman sessions, that was your first recording session, correct?
Yeah. We were all in the same band, but see, he got the record date, so everything went under his name.
I see. Okay.
So, because he was the one that we played the first concert for the AACM.
Okay.
Joseph I was involved in, he was involved in Bernfield. I think Thurman Barker or Arthur Reed. There was another drummer from New Orleans named Arthur Reed. He may have been involved in that first concert too. Some of those first concerts. In fact, he was here in Chicago, and he was playing with me a lot. And then he left and went back to New Orleans. I think he's still in New Orleans now.
And how were, the first few concerts of the AACM, and when you first presented it to the public, how was it received overall?
Well, we didn't have very many people.
Okay.
But we did put it on, And then later on, and they played some of my compositions, some of Joseph's compositions, and we all contributed. We had our little book that we was playing. And then later on, everybody else started playing the concert, but we played the first one.
Okay. On that album, Song 4, your composition, Little Fox Run, appears, which is a wonderful tune. And can you tell me what, does the title have any special significance, and what?
Well, not really, I mean, I just as the came to me, they called it a Little Fox Run, I don't know, it has no special significance about it as far as the title is concerned, but that's the way I heard that music at that particular time, and I took my pencil and I wrote it down, and I also, then Bill wrote one, there was another one on that album too, I think it was Adam's Rib.
Adam's Rib.
That's what it was.
Okay.
Adam's Rib.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been really exciting to see your own composition and this music being made.
Because, that was part of my contribution to it. And then some of that music, the Song 4, That was all improvised. That was just done spontaneously improvised. It was no chart on that. We just started playing.
Is that right?
And a lot of people said that I sounded a lot like Coltrane then. You know, maybe I did. I don't know. You know, it's been. And yeah. And that was that solo was the one that got me to Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was when you made the Accent album,
Right.
With
yeah.
Glawashnik is the pianist.
Well, that was on that Joseph John song for And they came over here and they found me and Bill. You know.
Great. How, can you tell that story and you know what all happened?
Well, a gentleman named Dieter Glawashnik, he came over here, you know, and he had a trio. And he had went all over. We were playing down on Clark Street at that particular time. Started at 12 o'clock and played to 4 o'clock in the morning. So one night he came in, his son was real little, and so he went to sleep underneath the table because it was late in the morning, late.
Yeah.
And he listened to us, and he left. And I gave him my telephone number. He called me. He said, "I've been all over." He said, "Well, I would like for you and Bill to come over and play with our trio." And that's how I got to Europe. And because Cecil Taylor, that's where I met Cecil Taylor down there.
Is that right?
Yeah, down at a place called Jay's Place. A writer here named Jerry Figge. He came in with Cecil Taylor and introduced me to him. And then when I went to Europe, I used to run into Cecil Taylor all the time.
Is that right?
Yeah, playing with the neighbors, you know.
Did you and Cecil ever play together?
No, we never played together. We talked about it, but we never really played together. But maybe someday we will.
Yeah, that would be a terrific combination. And after you made the Accent album, then you were back in Europe a year later with George Lewis and Hamid, Billy.
Yeah, I had my own group.
Right.
Yeah, and Brian Smith was playing bass because he was over there with another band. So, and Brian Smith was playing with me here in Chicago because he was kind of familiar with my music. So he got, you know, we went over there as a quartet, and then George Lewis was already over there. I think it was 5 of us on that particular record, the Moores album.
Right. Yeah.
And George Lewis played trombone. Yeah.
Okay.
Plus George had been playing with me in Chicago.
And that tour of Europe with you fronting your own band, how did that go? How were the...
Well, it wasn't really a tour. The first time we went over there, we just did that one gig. And the next year, which was '78, we had a little light tour. We was in Holland, and we was in, I think we had two or three gigs. Utrecht, we was in Utrecht, and in Holland, and let's see, and what was that other gig at? And then we played the Moores Festival. I think we did two, and then we did Nicholstorf. I think we did that. So it was a little light tour because the guy, Burkhard Henning, he was the one that organized it.
Right.
So we made, it was a sort of like a little tour, then we came on back. And I think Hamid went over there, but that was his first trip to Europe.
Okay.
You know.
And how was the music received?
It was received good, especially at the Moores Festival. That's why they had us back from '77, and they had us back in '78 on account of that one tune. I didn't realize at the time. It's called Saxophone.
Oh, right.
And it's pretty simple, so it's pretty little simple melody. It was hummable. And everybody liked it, and I was wondering, and then here, just recently, I realized that by that tune being so lyrical and simple, and everybody could hum it, it was very basic. And they asked us to come back in '78. So we took the band back again. And that's when, and then after that, Hamid, he started going back and forth to Europe by himself. And I came on back here in '79, and I opened a place up on the north side. I think it was, the Birdhouse. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How did that
Well, that was
that
right after,
had an interesting history.
That was after the first trip, my first time in 77. So I opened the Birdhouse up in 78, and it lasted for maybe about a year, and then I had to close it up. Then I went back in 70. Then I went back to Europe in 79.
Right.
And then I came back, and then I went to in 80. I went back by myself. Billy didn't go with me, and I played with the Dieter, accent trio again, and we did altogether with them. I did about 80 concerts. We just played every place. We played every radio station.
Wow.
In Germany. We went to, and at that particular time, we had to go to East Berlin to get to West Germany to get to Berlin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Let's talk about the Birdhouse for a little bit, because that was, I think, one of the, if not the earliest attempt at having a venue for progressive or avant-garde jazz, whatever, in Chicago. How did that go?
It didn't go too good. The first base, I just came back from Germany, so I got this place. It was on Lincoln Avenue. 4512 North Lincoln Avenue. It's in the German neighborhood,
Oh, yeah.
And I subleased it from a guy who had a business there, and he moved to another spot, but he still had the lease there, So he subleased it to me for 18 months. So he paid half of it, and I paid half of it, which was about my half was about $200. So he paid, the rent was $400 a month. He paid $200, and I paid the other, the subleases. So we subleased the place, and it was a nice spot. Had a rug on the floor and everything. The sound was great and everything. And one gentleman in the area came and built me a stage right in front of the window.
Wow.
And had a good sound. And we opened up, I call it the Birdhouse, because earlier it was a place in Chicago called the Birdhouse, but they had went out of business. So I just took the name and started calling that the Birdhouse. That was, and they didn't, at that particular time, we didn't have, I would try to get public place with amusement license. I couldn't get them, And so the police would come and shut us down, and we, about every 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 days,
Oh,
and we never could. So finally, the Illinois Arts Council gave us a lawyer, free, So they kept us in court. So we got a Birdhouse charter from the state, not for profit.
Oh, okay.
Not non-profit, not for profit. Thought that was going to help us. So the judge said, well, you can operate. Then the police would come and shut us down again.
And what was their pretext for shutting you down so
well?
often?
They said we didn't have no license. And then, so at that particular time, they didn't have no license for a place like that. Now they have, now, I think. See, now you can open up a place now, without license, But you got to register with the city,
I see.
So at that particular time, you know what I mean? So we wasn't selling any alcohol,
So, but it was just.
But we were just trying something, and that's why we went and got that charter, because like AACM got the same thing, but they got a non-profit organization.
Right.
501(c). They got that, but I didn't have it. I just had to register that. That means that I had to pay taxes with mine. In fact, I still got a corporation to this day. I'm still listed with the state. And that was one of the reasons why I was able to get this place here. By having that having that non-profit thing.
Okay. Did the neighbors, when you had the Birdhouse open, how did the neighborhood react to?
Well, that may have been part of it.
Yeah.
That may have been part of it, because they used to shoot kids used to shoot BBs through the window and all that.
Oh.
They didn't break the window, but you take a BB gun, and BB is just, So it was, it was pretty bad there, for a whole year. And then I closed it up, and then I went back to Europe in 1979 and played that. Went on back, and then I stayed over there in '80. So that place was, we closed it up, I think, in '79, I think it was. Then I went on back to Europe in 1980.
Okay. Now, the Velvet Lounge, when did you open that? When did that start?
Well, actually, I was working there. It wasn't called the Velvet Lounge then. I was just working there, you know. And the gentleman, we were sort of like related, you know. We came up together, you know, years ago. And his mother knew my mother, you know, and he got sick and he couldn't run the lounge, and he asked me would I come down and work for him. So I ran it, and that's how I learned how to run the tavern, you know, just by working for him. So that lasted from 1979, 80, all the way up to about 81. And then he passed away. And then when he passed away, by me being running the place all this time, the landlord asked me did I want to take it. And I had sold my house in 1979, and then that's when I went to Europe and stayed over there 2.5 months. And I had a little money, and he asked me if you qualify. I said we'll rent it to you. So I had been running it, and so he asked me did I want it, and that's how that went. And the same landlord that I got now.
Really? Wow. Great.
But only different, at that particular time, he didn't own the building. Another gentleman owned the building, but he was running that building. He was, you know,
I see.
he was running for a guy living in Florida. His name was Mr. Lima. And then he sold the building to him, and then and I just kept dealing with the same gentleman. Because I used to pay my rent to him, and he was sending it to Lima at that time, because he was renting too. You know, but he was managing that building for him. He was living in Florida, the man that used to own the building. And then, and I've stayed over there 24 years.
Well, you know, the Velvet Lounge has since become like a real institution in Chicago in terms of the education of up-and-coming musicians, and it's just all the musicians that I've spoken to, they say that the very existence of the Velvet Lounge, the importance of it is impossible to calculate. When did you start bringing music into the Velvet Lounge, and how did that whole scene evolve?
Well, I didn't start bringing music into the Velvet Lounge. I moved in there in 1982. We used to have Harrison Bankhead, I think, played with me in there. We used to do every other night, you know, a week. I think on a weeknight we would play there, you know. Not a weeknight, a weekend night, you know, like say a Friday or something. We started playing, you know, but that didn't work out. So then I decided to have a jam session on Sunday.
Right.
And every other Sunday or something like that, or once a month or something like that. It started out like that because the neighborhood started changing, and you know, I was losing a lot of customers, and I wasn't making any revenue. So I said, well, by me being a musician, I can just probably start it, you know. Start playing music in here, and we started playing music in there on a regular basis in 1993.
If you wouldn't mind allowing yourself to be uncharacteristically immodest, and if you could tell me, what do you think is the greatest contribution of the Velvet Lounge?
You mean the greatest contribution for the world, or for Chicago, or what?
Everything.
I think it is because I try to treat the musicians, you know what I mean, fairly. And I understand what they're going to be going through and what they need. They needed some place to play, you know. And I think it was basically over there. I was pretty lucky because at that particular time, the rent wasn't real high, you know what I mean, and I could afford it, you know what I mean, and we could, you know. And we just kept going, you know, as we were partners, you know, like in music. And I knew it was important for them to have some place to play their own music, you see. And it proved that because a lot of the guys went to college, got music degrees, and they started writing their own music and started trying to find their own voice. And they still done the same thing now. And that's how so it was sort of like that AECM thing, you know. We kept that concept, you know. I kept that concept.
Right.
Of, for the musicians to come in, and I didn't bother them. I just told them, you know, y'all, and they went their own way, you know.
I mean, it seems that at this point, your dedication, the Velvet Lounge, is like a life mission to you, that this is a much more important thing than just, you know, a place to showcase music or something, but the significance of it is far more wide-reaching than that.
Yeah, for the community, for the musicians that come up to have some place to play, you know.
Yeah.
And the ones that want to do it, all of them are not going to do the same thing. Some of them will probably drop out of music and do something else, you know. Because so I think the most important thing from you know, most of the musicians here, they went to college and they don't have to play music. They can do something else, you know. But if they want to play music, you know, they can continue, you know. So I think the most important thing is that they got options, you know.
Right.
Years ago, the musicians back in the day didn't. That was it for them, you know. Some of them was able to leave and teach, you know. You know, and a lot of them just dropped by the wayside. But now, you know, most of the kids now they continue with their education and they can do something else if they don't want to play music.
You've had numerous long-term musical associations with several musicians. Hamid Drake, of course, is the one with whom you've played together the longest. When I spoke with him a couple of months ago, he said, I guess, he lived in the neighborhood when he was a child. He lived close to you, right?
I've been knowing him ever since he.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a little bit about that? About what, you know, when you first knew him and what your relationship with him was like?
Well, my relationship with Hamid is pretty good because I've been knowing him, you know, because he's the same age my middle boy, next to the oldest boy. They were born at the same time, and they used to play together when they were, you know, because we were living in the same space at one time, you know. And then he moved out, you know, and moved to Glencoe. And I didn't see him for a long time, you know. But I knew his father and I knew his mother before, you know. I've been knowing her because his mother and my mother were very good friends, you know.
Okay.
So the next time I seen Hamid, he was in high school, in high school or going to college, or getting ready to go to college. So I ran into him in 1970 at a place called Alice's Revisited down on Sheffield. I think that's where it was, Wrightwood in Sheffield. I think that's where it was. And he was playing with a rock band, playing drums. But come to find out that him and my son started playing drums around about the same time, my oldest son, you know. So I ran into him in a place, me and Steve McCall and Lester Lashley, we had a trio. We played at Alice's, and and the day before that, he was playing with a band, a rock band, and I seen him sitting up on them drums, and he was just like, he was so comfortable and just rocking on them. I said, this guy's a natural. It's like that, you know. And by me knowing him, you know, knowing him ever since he was like that, you know. And his father had already told me he had been playing drums, but I had never heard him. And that was my first time hearing him play. You know, this was in 1970. And we talked, and I had a workshop going out in Evanston. And I said, well, man, I got a little workshop going on out at a place called Chandler's Park. And I said, why don't you come on down and check us out? And he came down, and I was surprised when he walked in.
Yeah.
And and he listened, to what we were doing and everything. We started talking. I said, yeah. And then later on, we started playing together, So my son was playing drums too, so I had both of them in the band at the same time. But my son was doing something a little bit different than what he was doing. He was most into the James Brown thing.
Who, Hamid or your son?
No, my son.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I said, well, look, Hamid, why don't you just come on and play with my quartet or whatever we was playing. And that's when he started. He had a friend playing bass named Felix Blackman.
Oh.
And they used to play together all the time. So, and he convinced him to come into the band, to play. And then that's when we got it on a regular basis. That's when I met George Lewis and Douglas and all them. Because I met Douglas first time I seen Douglas, he was a member of the AECM in the AECM school. And he came down there at Alice's that time when we played that gig. So that's how that happened.
I see. Okay.
But that was my, and then we were talking about drummers, at that particular time, and I mentioned Ed Blackwell. I didn't say anything about Max Roach. I don't know why, but I just Ed Blackwell was on my mind. I'd heard him with Ornette Coleman. He was doing something a little bit different. So what happened is he started listening to Ed Blackwell instead. And then that first record that we made, not one of the early records we did when we was in overseas, you know what I mean? He was playing that Ed Blackwell type of style, So because like when Ed Blackwell was playing melodies with Ornette Coleman, and so what happened is Hamid and myself, we the ones started those compositions. He was there when we first played those new compositions,
Really?
Yeah. When we started playing them out,
Okay.
Look, that was after Vernon Thomas, see. After that first band. This was in the 70s.
Right.
Okay. So then he started playing those compositions, and we kind of created this way of communication, communicating with each other, And he learned them tunes. I mean, he could hum. He learned them. He knew where to put the accents. He knew where to do everything. So actually, he's responsible. We both was responsible for that particular style. That particular.
Yeah. And Hamid also mentioned that the communication between you two is like musically, it's just like a telepathic type of thing. It's like you've played together for so long.
You played together for a long time. He knows because the reason he is because Hamid is melody. He likes melody.
Right.
So he tries to play melodies on the drums. Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't find out till later that he wanted to play trombone.
Really?
Yeah, he wanted to play trombone, but they didn't have any trombone. That's why he started playing drums. So I think he's got a trombone now. I think one of the musicians in Chicago, I think Jerry Bishop gave him a trombone. But he's very lyrical.
Yeah, very much so.
So we just I don't know, we got that telepathic thing, I mean we know what each other what we gonna we just compliment each other. So we played a lot of different ways, Sometimes we play together, and sometimes we play according to what I play something similar that I fit, and he'll do a rhythm, put it on that. So we just sort of like be going rhythmically. And I think we had an interview on Thrill Jockey that he was saying that the harmonies has been explored, but the rhythms is huge.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we always think about is the rhythms.
And his rhythmic vocabulary is just incredible. I mean, the kind of beats that he introduces and influences from so many different schools of percussion.
Different cultures.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from him because he had traveled in all these places. And when he come back, when we made that record back together again, he introduced me some things that I didn't, that was very, very challenging for me, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Such as?
Well, we overdubbed some stuff, and I hadn't, you know, I had never overdubbed nothing in my whole life, man. You know, that was new. Everybody was done it, but I had never did it. But I mean, he showed me how to do it. You know what I mean? He told me, say, well, you do this, and we overdubbed some stuff, and it came out beautiful. You know.
Okay.
And then on top of that, he introduced me to a lot of rhythms with different instruments, like the one we did, the Blue Winter, when William was playing that.
Right.
Nanga Swan, I think it is. And I keyed in on that, you know.
Right.
And I had never heard one before. So he kept me going. You know, introduced me to a lot of things, you know what I mean, which is new. But I've always been open, you know. I've always been open to doing different things and searching myself. So
Sure.
So by me having a searching mind, and I think he realized that, and you know, and because so we have been just learning from each other.
The latest CD that's come out with you and Hamid together, and The River, I'm sorry. What?
From the river to the ocean.
From the River to the Ocean, I'm sorry about that. That is such an exceptional CD. I mean, you know, all of the music you've done over the years is just top quality always, but I think this particular CD, the latest one, it's like you've just continually set the standard higher and higher, and on this one, I think you and Hamid just really go some places that, well,
I was responsible for some of it, and he was too, because I think he took my old tune, you know, Planet E, and that's one that we started out on.
Is that right?
We just did a new thing. With the instrumentation with Jeff Parker, Hamid, and then Harrison was playing piano, and that CD came out good because we did a lot of things that we had never did before. All of us kind of put some input. Harrison came up with the tune for Malachi. Then Josh Abrams was playing the Gimmery, you know, and done some things on there. And then Harrison was playing cello, you know, and bass. And we had both of them was playing bass, and Harrison when I think when Hamid, and then Hamid was playing drums, you know, and frame drums.
Right.
So we just did a lot of different things, you know, and then he was singing, and so it was just it was something there for everybody. And then we did that strut time thing that we had been playing for years and years, you know. So we just revived that music that we had, and did it over again. We did it in a different way, you know, with dealing with the different cultures, you know, too, you know.
A number of people, musicians and people who have listened to you for a long time, over the past few years, they've been describing the richness, the depth of your playing as some people are saying it can only be compared to Coltrane. And how do you feel about that?
Well, I've been trying to make a contribution. It's like Train made and all the rest of the musicians.
Right.
I mean, I think I got my own sound because a lot of people tell me, say, I heard you on the radio. A lot of people recognize it. Well,
Sure.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, well, like, yeah, I got my own voice, yeah.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Let's spend a few minutes talking about that. One of the things that marks your sound is that every note you play has meaning. It's like you never seem to overplay, and everything is very clearly articulated as well.
Yeah. Well, I learned that from listening to Bird and all the guys. You know, everything was clean.
Right.
You try to play it clean, you know what I mean, and try to, and precise, you know, and but with some feeling, you know.
Right.
And it all comes from that you know, you putting your whole self into it. You know, you putting your whole, you know, you playing. And I learned a lot from singers. You know, opera singers. You know, how they could just let themselves go and just let it all hang out. You know.
Right.
So you learn how to sing. You learn how to sing through the horn instead of just blowing the air. You sing, you know. So that has a lot to do with the continuity with breath control and just a combination of a lot of things, you know. I mean, it's not just no one thing, you know. You know.
Yeah.
So certain notes, you know what I mean. You approach them different. The high notes, you approach that one way. You approach the low notes another way. You know. So you have to do a certain thing for your high notes. You have to do a certain thing for your low notes. You know. So that's all got to, you know, all has to come in with the continuity of the whole picture. You know. And then you got to. There's several other things that you know that you have to just all put them together. You know what I mean? And I think all of the musicians that I heard that was good, they had all these things together. You know, Coleman Hawkins, all of them. That's the Young, all of them. You know, and they played a lot of different ways. You know.
So for young musicians coming up, and you know, what words of wisdom would you want to give for a musician that says, "Listen, I want to play free jazz saxophone, and that's all I really care about." What would you tell them?
I would tell them is to learn the horn. Learn how to express yourself freely on the horn, you know, and learn as much about that instrument that you're playing as possible. Because that's what makes you free. I mean, that word free, you got to be free from something. You know. So then when you master that instrument, best you possibly can, or whatever you want to do. I don't know what they want. Some of them want to do different things. These guys was masters on their instrument, you know.
Right.
And that's how they were able to, and they learned it, but they was exploring all the time, and searching, you know. But they got these schools now, and it just didn't start. It's been going a long time. That they're teaching all of them to play one way, you know.
Yeah.
You see, and this ain't just started. This has been going on a long time, you know. So you just have to listen, and you know, and learn the instrument. You know what I mean, and learn as much about your different avenues you can go up. You know, it's more than one way. You got more than one way to do things. You got a lot of different ways to do it. You know, you got a lot of choices.
Right.
You got a lot of choices of notes. You got a lot of, you know, so you got a lot of choices, but you have to and try to play as if you know. It all depends on what they want to do. I mean, I can't tell them what to do, but you know, and you know, and try to find your own voice.
Right. One of the things Hamid also mentioned is the spiritual basis of the music, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You got it's very spiritual, you know what I mean, and you have to really believe in what you're doing, you know. And you put your whole heart and soul. It's just like we learned that from the churches, you know. You know how they get into it, and you know, and they be shouting. The sisters be shouting, and they be, you know, and it looked like they'd be in some kind of trance, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So that's that spiritual thing, you know. So that's Coltrane. You know, his father was a preacher, you know. So. So that was, you know, that's where he got that spiritual thing from, you know, from in a lot of these musicians, not young musicians, play in the church. Yeah, not now. I know the bass player. he plays in the church. Yeah. The drummer, Corby White, they all played in the church. Yeah.
And how about you and your musical development? Did the church enter
No,
into that at all?
I didn't play in the church, but I got the message.
Okay.
I mean, I know what's happening with that, you know.
Okay.
I got the message.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I learned that over the years, you know, when I started playing, you know, how to take my time, you know, and use space, you know what I mean, and play from the bottom of my heart, you know, and mean it. Not just playing the notes, just mean every note. Every note has to have some kind of meaning. You know,
Right.
has to have something behind it.
Great.
So
And yours? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
that was it. That was the thing. You know? So I've learned a lot, you know, about the music as I went along. A lot of the things that I didn't experience as a youngster, but I learned about it later on, and you know what I mean, and I applied it. You know, about how I could get into the inside of the horn, you know,
Right.
and sing through it instead of just playing, you know. Because,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You have such a visceral sound.
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah,
really.
lyrical.
Yeah.
Lyrical sound.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Fred. I think let's call it quits for today,
Okay.
and